This is Keys to the Shop, episode 146, How to Host a Throwdown, with Justin Shepard of Spencer's Coffee. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm really excited to have you along today to talk about hosting throwdowns. Throwdowns are obviously one of the most popular ways that coffee bars and coffee communities choose to get together to have fun, raise money or awareness about something, and just kind of inspire community. And they can be done well or they can be done poorly, and I've been around long enough to see both. In fact, and today's guest, Justin Shepard, hosts one of the best throwdowns in the nation. And today he's going to share with us his secrets to success in hosting a great throwdown. A lot of throwdowns can turn out to be really just thrown together, and they don't really inspire community. They're really frustrating, and I've attended those too. So today's conversation is really important to help you avoid unnecessary mistakes, learn from Justin's experience, and host a great throwdown. So I'm excited for that. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier who curates the best equipment from around the world to fit perfectly with the needs of both their enthusiast and professional customers. So that means if you're just wanting to build out a great home bar or a commercial coffee bar, they have exactly what you need to make that a success. And helping you succeed in making great coffee at home or in the shop is what drives them. So if you're looking for the best equipment and expert assistance to go along with it, I would encourage you to look no further than prima-coffee.com for all of your needs, be it home or commercial. If you happen to be going to Boston SCA Expo coming up shortly here, you can check them out at booth 418, talk to them in person, or you can go to the website prima-coffee.com, give them a call, email them, and let them know the Keys to the Shop sent you. Thank you very much, Prima, for your support of Keys to the Shop. Keys to the Shop is also brought to you by the Pacific Baristas series. This is a line of plant-based performance beverages that are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. So whether we're talking about almond, soy, coconut, rice, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee makes this a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific is a huge supporter of the barista community and specialty coffee, and these products are just a great testimonial to that fact. So I would encourage you, go to pacificfoods.com, learn more about how their Barista Series line of plant-based beverages can help you elevate the non-dairy offerings in your cafe. So thank you very much, Pacific, for your support of Keys to the Shop. All right, so today we're talking about throwdowns and how to host a really great throwdown. And chances are, if you're in a coffee bar right now, you're thinking about or have already hosted a throwdown, and you want to be able to do it well from the get-go, or better than you've previously done it. And today's guest is going to really help us outline some key things to factor in when you're planning this event to make it a success for everybody involved. So let's talk a little bit about Justin Shepard, today's guest. He is the owner of Spencer's Coffee, a large cafe in downtown Bowling Green, Kentucky, and is a creator of My Old Kentucky Throwdown, now in its 7th year. My Old Kentucky Throwdown, also known as the KYTNT, is one of the largest latte art competitions in America. It boasts a 64 competitor bracket and thousands of dollars in prize money. The event is presented by Pacific Foods and has raised tens of thousands of dollars for autism-related charities in the South Central Kentucky region. Co-sponsors of the event include La Marzocco, Prima Coffee, Baratza, Akaya, St. Anthony Industries, Sunnergoss Coffee, Barista Magazine, and more. For more information on this event, you can go to spencerscoffee.com/KYTNT. Through the years, Justin has really been honing this throwdown more and more and has learned a lot in the process. And having attended personally this event, I can attest to how well it's run, compared to so many other throwdowns that I've been to in my 20 years in specialty coffee. So I'm excited to get to share this conversation because we go over an outline of points that Justin has also written about in Barista Magazine in an article called How to Throw Down. This conversation dives into these points. We have some conversation about the ins and outs of each point he makes in that article. And I would encourage you, if you're a Barista Magazine subscriber, to check that article out. It's the April-May issue, so the one just hitting your mailboxes in the next few days here. It has some extras in that article that we don't cover in this conversation that I think you're really going to find useful. But again, in this conversation, the point of it is centered on what has Justin learned about hosting a really great throwdown, and how can this benefit you, and what are the steps to take into consideration while you're planning this out. So I know you're going to get a lot out of it because this all is super practical stuff. And so let's get right to the conversation. Here now is the conversation about how to host a throwdown with Justin Shepard. Well, hey, Justin, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, this is the season where you start to prepare for the my Old Kentucky Throwdown.
Yes, yes, we're well into that season.
So the pressure is mounting. How are things going?
Good so far. I've got a number of things on a checklist that I have to make sure I get done, and so I'm pretty far along on that. I'm maybe a week behind, but I'm usually about a month behind. So I'm getting better at this every year.
How many years has it been now?
So this will be the 7th annual. We took a little bit of a break for a few months, shifted from fall to spring, but this will be the 7th one of these that we've done.
Okay. And so I know you have an article that is in Barista Magazine. It's probably out by the time that this episode airs. At the time that we're talking about this, it's maybe a week or so before it hits people's mailboxes. But it's about how to host a killer throwdown. And I can't tell you how many times I've been asked the question about hosting throwdowns and what to do, how to do it, and when you mentioned that you have this article, and it just was like, click, you're the perfect person to talk to about this, having participated in your throwdown, both as a competitor and as a judge. It's just extraordinarily well run, and people have a ton of positive things to say about it. So I'm looking forward to diving into this world with you. When you started the throwdown, what kind of expectations did you have when you first started it, or even before that? How did you come to start investing into throwdowns in your shop?
Sure. I think for your listeners, Spencer's Coffee is located in a town called Bowling Green, Kentucky, and so we're about an hour away from Nashville and about 2 hours from Louisville. And so I had some connections with people in Louisville, people in Nashville, baristas and owners and things, but realized that none of my staff really did. And was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Jesse Harriet. Mm-hmm. Jesse, if you're listening, hey. But, he kind of gave me the notion that, we should host a throwdown here in Bowling Green, because I'd been to a couple in Louisville. I'd taken a couple people to them. But the idea sort of came about that, Nashville and Louisville had these growing coffee communities 7.5 years ago. And wouldn't it be cool if we could get those communities to meet in the middle, so to speak, for a throwdown, and do some community building and have some fun, and also give my staff and maybe even some of my customers a glimpse at the wider coffee world. And so that's the origin story.
Okay, so you decided that it would happen, and originally it was called Kentucky versus Tennessee Throwdown. or the reverse of that. I'm not sure which one. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was the Kentucky Tennessee Latte Art Throwdown and Caffeination Celebration.
Oh, okay, that's the full name.
That's the full name, and part of the idea there too was we had a couple roasters from Louisville and a couple roasters from Nashville set up and give out free coffee samples and talk to people about brewing and things like that. We wanted to make it a little more than just some coffee nerd event, although we like that. But we wanted to give, casual people who would walk in off the street or newer baristas who maybe hadn't had a lot of exposure to the wider coffee world. We wanted to delve into some of that and make it more than just standing around and staring at people pouring milk into cups. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, but that's so exciting. You have obviously participated in throwdowns like that. Was that sort of the motivation for making it a little bit more of a multi-layered event where people had more things to do or experience than just trying to see what the judges were seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally, that first year, I think it was more about just exposing some of my customers and some of my staff to different coffees. But then as the event has developed over the years, and I've participated in tons of throwdowns in tons of places, I sort of, I view the whole thing with customer eyes the same way that we do with our shops. And I realize like latte art throwdowns can be super boring for the person who is just there to support their friend, or if you go out in the first round, like it's harder than it seems to make it engaging throughout the whole event. And so having coffee samplings and then some other things that we've come up with over the years is really meant to make the event engaging for everybody there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And certainly, even as a professional who should be riveted by this, in some ways, it just is so, it can be a homogenous experience. And so I always appreciate that added value. It's something to do while you're there, as well as just, setting it up so that it can be enjoyed by everybody who comes in. And that's really what this article is talking about, giving people some kind of key areas to hone in on before they start their efforts in throwing a throwdown or hosting a throwdown, for a better way to put it. And so I thought it would be really interesting to go through here and talk about these. I believe there's 8 areas that you've kind of extrapolated from your experience with hosting these successful throwdowns that will lead to success, or at least to give people a better chance at it. So the first one, I think, was getting buy-in. So getting buy-in meaning like you're talking to your community and your staff, and what kind of things do you think people should do to get buy-in before they kind of go too far down the road of hosting a throwdown?
Yeah, sure. So I can speak from experience that doing this by yourself is very draining and very difficult. And so, you need people to help you. The obvious choices are some of your staff. If you sort of explain the vision, what you want to do, how you want it to feel, you can get a lot of volunteer help just from your staff. Maybe you need to pay them. It depends on, I guess, what your event is for. We raise money for charity, which we'll get into later. So it's all volunteer. But, and then beyond that, there may be people, regular customers who are really into the idea or things like that who can help. And then aside from just the help piece, you got to have people jazzed about participating and involved. And so we'll get into some of that too. But, just thinking through at the outset, is anybody interested in doing this? And if they are, will they help me, put it together?
So by getting people involved, obviously you're taking the pressure off yourself, which needs to happen because you're kind of, as the catalyst for this event, you're going to need to oversee it. And it'd be tempting to try to do everything yourself to make sure it goes right. So, I guess you just have to check the ego a little bit and get people involved, or you're going to burn out. And some people might just be skeptical of their staff's enthusiasm. Maybe not try that much to get them interested because they might just discount that and say, well, they're not going to be interested, so I'll do it. What would you say to somebody who's in that mindset, who might need to generate a little excitement for their staff about this event?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, and that's something that I don't think I really hit on in the article. But if someone's listening to this and thinking, "Oh, latte art throwdown, that sounds cool," but they haven't been to one or their staff hasn't been to one, I would encourage to, if it's at all possible, to get to one or get to two, to give them sort of a glimpse at, what is this thing to start with? Why is it fun? Why is it a good thing to do? Once when we hosted our first one, like I said before, we had taken a few people to some throwdowns over maybe the year before, and it was easier to get buy-in from there because our staff came back going, we want to do this too. And also the community piece is huge. I think people, your staff, your baristas, they want to be connected to other people. They want to know that they're not on an island by themselves. And so, playing up that community piece and sort of letting them know, hey, so-and-so might be down from Louisville or so-and-so might be down from Nashville, can be a good way to sort of encourage them to get involved. And then because we we always raise money for charity through ours, it's a little easier to get buy-in because there's a cause behind it.
Nice. Yeah, well said. So it kind of dovetails nicely into your next point in the article, which was promotion. Now, we were just talking about promotion within, but now promoting the event, you say, should be something that's done early and often. Can you kind of dive into what you mean by that and what are some best practices?
Sure. Most of the people that are going to be competing in a latte art throwdown are hourly workers whose schedules are not fixed. And so if you want people to get involved, you've got to let them know pretty well ahead of time so that they can, request off, or maybe a whole shop might close a little early to come. We've had that happen before. But just getting the information out there, because, one of the worst feelings in the world would be to go to all this trouble to put together this event and then, have less attendance than you could, and then hear from people afterward, oh, I really wish I could have made it to that, but I didn't know about it. And that's definitely happened to me in the past. And so I work really hard to sort of, let people know as soon as I know some of the details. So our event will be on April 25th this year. I think I put that date out there in January.
Yeah.
And I haven't promoted a ton, but just little pieces of information are super helpful. It's also good to promote to like your local media. TV stations love this kind of event. It's very visual. They can, get a shot of somebody pouring a latte, and they can get a shot of all these, baristas being excited about what seems like sort of a trivial thing, but you can get like free publicity for your shop pretty easily if you let them know ahead of time, because what else are they going to put on a Thursday night? They don't,
Shoot, yeah. I mean, seriously is true, because if I felt in the past like, no, they got way better things to do, or they have way more stuff to cover, but most often they're very desperate for stories. Not to say that that's only the realm of the desperate to cover.
No. I was a journalist before I got into coffee, and I can guarantee you every single day at every newspaper and every TV station, they're saying, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? So let them know what's going on, and they'll probably come check it out.
Nice. So next on your list, you talk about sponsors, and that's so huge because these events are complicated and costly to put on if it wasn't for having people to back it, besides your own company, but seeking them out early, again with the early thing, what's some advice from your experience in terms of seeking out acquiring sponsors?
Sure. So it's pretty common for anybody that's been to a throwdown in recent years that there are some prizes, right? So you have a registration fee, and the top 2 or 3 people win some of that money. But there's also often some prizes like a coffee grinder or a coffee brewer or T-shirts or whatever. And coffee companies are happy to sponsor this kind of thing. It gets their name out there. They like having a presence in the barista community. However, every company has a donation budget, and to get in on that, you need to sort of reach out to them well in advance of the event. If you're 2 weeks away and you're just starting to call people and ask for prizes, you're probably not gonna get a lot of involvement. And even if you do, it's going to leave a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth of, whatever company representative, because they would appreciate more involvement than just shipping you an item.
So, what are we talking about in terms of healthy time frames before the event? Like 6 months?
Oh, no. I wouldn't advise anybody plan for that long. You're probably 2 months is a good benchmark. In the Barista magazine, there is a timeline alongside the article that talks about some of this stuff, contacting potential sponsors, confirming with those sponsors, contacting area coffee shops to promote, rounding up volunteers, kind of a timeline that I've found to be helpful. So definitely check out the article.
Cool. So yeah, I'll link to that article, Barista Magazine's online version as well. If you subscribe to Barista Magazine, you'll see it in your next issue, April-May issue. But cool, that's awesome. And knowing some of these things ahead of time takes a lot of the pressure off. And if you get down to the wire, if you're a manager who's been tasked by the owner to put together a throwdown and you've kind of forgot about the sponsors or don't have enough, information like this really helps you breathe and focus on other details. So, and
there's so much to forget. There's so much to forget, and there's so much to overlook. And so, hopefully, this information in the article, hopefully this podcast is going to be helpful to people to avoid, problems that are going to make their event run not so smoothly. And I've got some stories about those too that I can tell you later. But
I'll definitely circle back. We need to talk about those. Again, it's just huge to have these sponsors. As if you've been watching barista competitions for any length of time, the live streams or participating in them, very well. Sometimes we're like, oh, they're thanking the sponsors, but good Lord, if it wasn't for the sponsors, these things could literally not happen.
Yeah, for sure. And especially depending on how big your event is, you're going to need either more sponsorship or you're going to end up putting in a lot of your own money. We have been super fortunate to work with a bunch of great sponsors over the years. Pacific Foods has actually been the headline sponsor of our Throwdown for the past couple years, and they have been very generous to both the baristas through prize money and also to charity, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I guess the key point would be, reach out to companies that you utilize, right? Don't call Pacific Foods and ask them for money if you buy Silk brand soy milk, but You know, reach out to companies that you already utilize or that you already have a relationship with. And then just tell them what your event is, what you hope to do with it, and then sort of see what they offer. I don't suggest reaching out and saying, hey, La Marzocco, can you donate a Linea Mini to my throwdown that I've never hosted before? They're probably not going to do that.
Right.
But, if you have a La Marzocco espresso machine on your counter, you can reach out to them and say, hey, we're hosting this throwdown. We use your stuff. And they might send you, some T-shirts or some mugs or something.
Right on.
It doesn't have to be big, but you'll never know unless you ask.
Yeah, that's so true. And getting up the courage to ask, you'll immediately, I think, see how approachable people actually are.
And one other thing on sponsors before we move off of this, you are lucky enough to get sponsors, which you will be if you're polite. Follow up with them after the event. Send them pictures of your event. Send them a wrap up. Anything you can do to show them that you didn't just take their stuff and then sort of take them for granted. Put their name up on the wall or have your MC announce your sponsors. Whatever you can do to sort of give them a reward for sponsoring your event is going to be really, really helpful in building that relationship going forward.
Oh yeah, gets you a lot of rapport and trust, just like running a coffee shop with your customers and your staff.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've got this secured, we've got a good framework to work off of in sponsors. Regarding sponsors, you move on in the article to talk about community and considering the community, and I wonder if you can talk about what that looks like, because that's on the face of it seems pretty general, because if I'm hosting a throwdown, that's for the communities. And is it possible to host a throwdown without considering your community?
Yeah, so this one I think depends a ton on your context, right? So if you're at a shop in a large metropolitan area where there are 20 coffee shops around and you're one of them, that's going to look different than it looks for me here in Bowling Green, where I'm one of the only independent coffee shops in the city. All that said, the throwdown can be about more than just getting baristas together. That's a worthy enough goal, but there's probably a charity that you're passionate about, or perhaps there's a business down the street that you want to partner with in some way. I think that's going to look different depending on your context, but just figuring out ways to benefit other people besides just the competitors is really huge.
Yeah, so it just seems like this is the type of thing that requires intention from the get-go. It's a part of the plan, and you've been mentioning the charities that are involved in this throwdown. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that is and what you do specifically at the Old Kentucky Throwdown for charity.
Yeah, I would love to. So my two sons are on the autism spectrum, and so pretty much every year we've benefited some organization that serves that community. There have been a couple different ones that we've benefited over the years. This year's throwdown and last year's as well benefited an organization in our community called the Hive of Bowling Green, and they're a pretty new organization. They help adults who are on the autism spectrum find greater independence, and they do a lot of different stuff. I can't really explain all of it on the air, but it's a super worthy cause. We also solicit small donations from local businesses for door prizes. That gives the community aspect a little more texture. It gives your visitors, something else that they can sort of get excited about. And then depending on how you're doing it, we sell raffle tickets for those door prizes, and then that's just more money that we can give to charity. reach out to food truck in your community. Anything you can do to sort of make it about more than just your store or more than just coffee shops is just going to enrich the event.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a key thing, and that especially that you make it something that is dear to your heart and to your business. That is, every shop is going to have a different charity, or as they're listening to this, think, oh, well, we really want to support this organization because they mean a lot to the owners, or they mean a lot to the staff. And people have even donated charitably to their own staff when their staff is in need. So that might even be something.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So when it comes to involving your community, I think this is a great framework to work through. And I like the texture of community, the way you put it there, that it's not just this one aspect, but it's a complex and a more layered thing. So when you're putting on the throwdown now, you have to organize it in such a way that you've got all these people from the community, you've got a lot of involvement. There's a lot of potential energy so far being stored up, and you could design it in such a way that it undoes all of those great intentions. So your next point in the article was talking about having audience eyes. And so, which immediately makes me think of Betty Davis eyes, but can you talk about audience eyes? Because you mentioned it earlier in the conversation. Why is it important to view this whole setup from the point of view of the audience?
Well, I think, the key for me is that I don't want to put on an event that people are going to walk away from and go, that sucked. I don't want to do that. In our shops, we pay close attention to where we place things, how we arrange chairs, how things look, how things feel. And we do that because we want our customers to feel comfortable, and we want them to not be confused about where do they order and where do they pick up their drink and where do they put their trash. And so a throwdown, or any event really, needs to be prepared with that same care, I think, in order to make it engaging for the customer, or not the customer. I'm so used to saying customer, Chris.
Yeah.
To make it so engaging for the guests, and also just to make it run smoothly. I've been to so many throwdowns over the years, and smooth is not how they usually go. And so I've been, thinking about this for a long time, and trying to help myself, but also help other people figure out how do we arrange this so that it's not just a total disaster. And disaster might be a strong word, but I can guarantee you, after throwdowns are over, sometimes the owner or the couple baristas that are left to clean up feel like it's kind of a disaster. So you want to avoid that. But I think we talked earlier about the coffee sampling, which I think is just a super easy way to get people involved, to give them something else to do. Having a display screen that can show your audience the lattes that's probably the most important thing that you can do to make it make sense. Your listeners, or you or me, who've ever been to many throwdowns, have been to ones in shops that are quite spacious, and everybody at the throwdown is sort of just packed behind the judges, trying to crane their necks and see what the lattes look like.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the event, is who pours the prettiest latte. It's not going to be very much fun if nobody can see them. So, we mount just a couple iPhones on little tripod. All this stuff super cheap. It's stuff you already have, or you can get on Amazon pretty cheap. But, we mount those cameras over the area where you put your drinks down in front of the judges. And then, you can use a cord, or you can invest a little more in some other technologies. But long story short, get that picture on a screen somewhere that people can see it. Mm-hmm. is just going to make it so much more fun for everybody who's hanging out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just nodding my head thinking there's so many times where I wish when I hear the crowd erupt in applause, I can't see it. I'm just like, ugh, I wish I could see it, and screw it. I'm just going to go outside and hang out. And I don't want to like hang out if there's nothing for me to hang out for.
Right.
And also I've seen it, to add to what you said, I've seen it where that is something people have, but they do it in such a way that their normal cafe lighting just bleeds into the picture and you can't even see it, even though they have it.
Oh, yeah.
You have to go play by play. I almost like treat this like you're going to a barista competition and you're putting together a routine. You got to think of all those little details that, just walk through it with your staff or with yourself, right? Like otherwise you won't really have audience eyes, right? You'll just have like you'll imagine what they might see, but you're not actually seeing it yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the article. I think I do, but, if you're going to do it, make sure you experiment with it first. Mm-hmm. Don't assume that the camera you have will really connect to the projector unless you tried it first. Don't assume that you can see the projector on the wall in your lighting, like you just said. Try it first. Takes a little more work that way, but it's totally worth it.
Right on. And so now when people come to this event, they're going to have expectations. Half of what we do, if not more, as professionals in coffee is about managing staff and customer expectations appropriately. Of course, we're in specialty coffee, so they expect a special experience. And when specialty coffee people put on a special event, I think there's even more expectation that people come with. So communicating clear expectations is one of those keys that you talk about in this Barista Magazine piece. Talk about clear expectations and what that actually looks like when you're putting together a throwdown.
Yeah, that's a great point. Number one, if it's going to be a competition, which again, it's a friendly competition, but you still got people that are serious about it. They want to do their best. And so if you're going to have a competition, you need to have some understanding of what the rules of that competition are. Your typical, the simplest latte art throwdown is, you make a bracket, people pour lattes against each other, the judges decide which one is best, and you move on. But, other things that can come into play are, do the baristas get to pour their lattes in their own ceramic mugs, maybe the ones they've been practicing with, or the ones they have at their shop, or do they have to use yours? Let them know that ahead of time. Are there going to be some funky rounds, like, you're going to have to pour with alternative milk in one round, which we do. Are you going to have to, pour something that the judge asks you to, right? So like, hey, you need to pour a swan. Well, that's going to be frustrating if you didn't come in knowing that was going to be a rule and you've never poured a swan in your life. You don't know how to do it. You could have worked on that, but you didn't know. So just getting those expectations out there and up front. Another key thing is to make the judging transparent. And we do this with barista competitions, right? The score sheet, everybody knows what's on the score sheet. They get to see that ahead of time. It's going to be frustrating for people if they feel they did their best, but they're being judged in a way that they weren't prepared to be. Nobody wants to be in a competition that they feel is unfair or that they feel is arbitrary. So just explaining, it doesn't have to be long, but just explaining up front, either on your, poster or in your Facebook event or whatever, however you're promoting, just explain like what are the criteria that are going to be judged.
That's so important. Yeah. I mean, and you can always get better at that because you're going to be so in the thick of planning, and you're not going to hit every detail that can be hit when it comes to expectations, but you're going to learn event after event. No doubt you're a lot more thorough now with this competition or this throwdown than you were when you first started.
Yeah, absolutely. In every single way, and that's kind of the whole point of the article, is just to not to say I'm really smart and I know how to do this. It's to say, no, like, I've made so many mistakes and this has been so challenging, and yet it's worth it. And so I just want to help people sort of skip past those mistakes, those things that can be overlooked. And hopefully the next throwdown or the first throwdown that listener organizes is going to be more successful because of it.
Right. So I feel like that gives us a good segue into what was mentioned in passing earlier about issues that can arise within a throwdown, where it seems like a lot of issues that might come up are either issues of structure or issues of expectations not being met. What are some of the things that you've seen or experienced that can really throw a wrench into the works? It's not necessary, but it's more likely to happen than not if you're not prepared for it.
Sure. One that I already mentioned was regarding the rules. I've been to throwdowns before where it was, told to the competitors basically when the event started, oh, by the way, every round the cup's going to get smaller, and then at the end you're going to be pouring a double winged swan into a shot glass. This is not a joke. This actually happened, and you can imagine that the person who won that competition did not really win because they're the best. It was just sort of random. The organizers thought it would be like fun and funny, but it was just frustrating for most of the people who were there who, really wanted to do their best. And so, that's an example of just not thinking through the impact that your rules are going to have, and also not preparing people ahead of time. And then there's always, maybe not always, but there are often moments at throwdowns that get a little heated because two competitors will pour some things that are very similar, and it comes down to really fine judging points. You see this with your work at Coffee Fest latte art competitions, where there's a lot of money at stake, but you see it in any throwdown, really. And so, being transparent about, we're judging based on this, and letting people know on the front end. One of the things that we do that we might get into later is we take pre-registration for our throwdown, so people can sign up ahead of time, via email and stuff. And so when they do that, we send them an email back that has a very brief explanation, like, this is meant to be fun. Please conduct yourself professionally and courteously, and be excited for that younger barista who you think didn't pour as well as you did, but they somehow won anyway. Anybody listening who was at last year's throwdown, there was a little bit of drama, and that was because the prize money was pretty huge last year. And I had not expected that. So some of this too is not only clear expectations for people coming to your event, but clear expectations for yourself as the organizer is something that I think I'm still learning about. So
right, and don't take the throwdown word a little too literally there.
Right.
We're not actually taking it outside. The other thing I was thinking of as you're talking there is like the judging, especially as a judge in Coffee Fest. Your judgment, or the judgment of who you select as judge of this competition, is going to be one of the high points of scrutiny. And I wonder if you might just briefly get into what it looks like to make sure that your judging panel is above board.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's one that I didn't think of the first couple years, and then as the event grew, became sort of more important. But number one, if you have a panel, say of 3 judges, this is sort of the common way that a throwdown's organized. If you have a panel of 3 judges, I think it's really critical that at least one of those judges is somewhat good at latte art. And the reason I say that is because it's hard to judge the difficulty or the skill of a pour if you don't understand the basics behind how it works. What I've seen in the past, far superior drink get voted down, mainly because the judges didn't understand what went into it.
Yeah.
And they just sort of said, oh, well, like this one's a big heart and I like hearts. So, hearts make everybody feel good, which they do. I love hearts too. Yeah. But having somebody on that panel who, really knows what they're doing, knows what they're looking at. And then having that person meet with the other 2 judges ahead of your event. I don't mean like a day before or anything, just, a few minutes before the event starts. And all getting on the same page of what are the criteria we're judging on, and maybe your experienced judge explains with some examples what they mean.
Yeah, exactly. So you're calibrating. That's something judging should be based on a somewhat calibrated set. I mean, it is the informality of throwdowns that bleeds into the formality of judging, especially when you're doing something that's people are taking seriously. You have to balance that informality and having fun with the professionalism and taking the actual scoring pretty seriously. And because I feel like people get in trouble when they just randomly choose their favorite customer to judge latte art, when the baristas are hoping that it's like a professional bragging right that they can have.
That's exactly right. I think as owners or maybe managers, we can get a little disconnected from what it's like to be a barista who's really into latte art. You and I, we both have been good at latte art. We've both been involved in this. And you and I both, probably more often than we'd like to admit, sort of roll our eyes when we hear people talking about latte art, because it's like, this is sort of dumb. It's not dumb, but it's less important than the drink tasting good. It's less important than good customer service. It's the icing on the cake. And so we can get disconnected from sort of how seriously younger baristas or even just dedicated baristas can take it. And so it would be a disservice for us to give them a judging panel or a set of rules that sort of demeans what they're doing.
Yeah, well said.
We want to respect people's time.
Yep, 100%. So the day has come, and we've organized. We've done all of these things. We've got our sponsors. We've got expectations are pretty clear as best as we can, especially if it's our first one. Now it's the execution time. So organizing and executing the actual event could be a pretty high pressure situation. And at the same time, you say here in this section of your piece for Barista Magazine that you should have fun. So there's these 2 things, like, yes, we need to execute this thing, but you also want to have a good time doing it. So, how do you strike the balance and really execute this thing well?
Sure. That's a great question, and it's not easy, but it is doable. I think a checklist for yourself as the organizer is sort of step 1, and that sounds really like, of course, but we wouldn't ask people to open a coffee shop without some sort of checklist that they can use to figure out what to do. After they've done it a million times, they don't need the checklist anymore, maybe. But we haven't done this a million times, so we need that. And so I like to just make a list of, what are the activities I want to happen? What are the times I want those things to happen? Who's going to make those things happen? So if you have judges, they need to be informed when they show up, and you need to figure out where they're going to sit and how they're going to communicate. If you're going to have MCs, how are you going to hear them? All these sort of little questions, a little bit of planning on the front end goes a long way towards making sure that when the day comes, you know where to put things, how to set things up, where you want people to go for various things. So if you need a sign-up table, where's that going to be? And how's the flow going to be from there to wherever you want people to go next? The bracket is a big one that, for whatever reason, I've been to so many throwdowns where the event starts, say, at 7 p.m., and at 7:30, somebody's got a ruler and is drawing a bracket on a piece of, poster board. Like, you could have done that the day before or the week before. Don't leave that stuff till the end. Think through it. Funny story. So I was at an event in Seattle a few years ago. It was Coffee Fest time, and Coffee Fest was going on in Seattle. A major espresso machine maker had a big throwdown. They promoted the heck out of it. I think you and I went to it. Maybe you were there. But we got there. There's a line out the door of baristas waiting to sign up. And one of the organizers finally walks outside and says, "Hey, does anybody know how to do a bracket? How do we do a bracket?"
Oh, no.
Like, how many people go on it? How do we do this? They saw someone that I knew saw me and said, "Hey, you've done this before. Why don't you come in?" So I went in. I helped them make the bracket. That was just sort of a nightmare. We get the people in to have this big competition, and they're, going to serve complimentary beer. They don't know how to work the beer tap.
No.
The beer tap doesn't work. So then I jump back there. I end up helping pour beers for a good portion of the night, which, I didn't mind at the time. But all that to say, it can go south real quick if you don't think through just all the things that are involved. And nobody wants that. Your organizer, you as the organizer, don't want that. You don't want that to be the impression of your business. You don't want that to be the experience of the competitors, and you don't want that to be sort of what you put out there for any customers or other guests who happen through.
Man, absolutely not. And that nightmare scenario would really make you learn really quick, or make you give up. Like, I'm not going to do this again, or I'll do it again, but I'll do it better. Which you could avoid that completely if you just dispel with the notion that you can do something like this with a lot of people involved and get away with sort of a half-baked effort. Because, again, I think one of the things that your article really highlights, and what our conversation today highlights, is how much intentionality has to go into organizing an event, any event, really, that you want to be successful, even if it's something that's like supposed to be low key and chill and fun. It's like people that get into coffee shops, owning coffee shops because they like the chill atmosphere.
Isn't that like most people?
Yeah, exactly. I like the vibe of my shop, and I thought, why not do this for myself? And you mean, why not do this to yourself? Is that what you mean? Because
right, exactly.
But this conversation really gives us a good framework, and this article is key. I think everybody who thinks about hosting a throwdown should absolutely use this as the textbook for what they do, because you're just a prime example of somebody who has learned from mistakes and approaches this with such great intentionality and have been rewarded for it, because I can't think of anyone who doesn't think highly of your throwdown and what it accomplishes for your staff and the community. So I really appreciate you joining me on the show to sort of draw out some of these points and some questions around them. It's been really, really helpful.
Well, that's awesome, Chris, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do it. The Barista Magazine article has some other lists in there, a supply list, a volunteer roles list. I tried to think through everything just to make it easier for anybody who wants to do this but isn't sure where to start. You can do it. I'm making it sound complicated. It's not complicated. It doesn't have to be. But like you said, it just helps to be prepared on the front end, have some answers to questions, understand what you're getting into, and then. But it's a great, throwdowns. Sort of get a bad rap sometimes, but I think there's a way to salvage the idea of the latte art throwdown, and also other creative types of coffee competitions or events that we're seeing pop up more and more.
Excellent. So how can we stay in touch with you? What's going on with this throwdown, as well as your business, Spencer's?
Yeah, so thanks. So, my business, Spencer's Coffee, is it's just a coffee shop. I have one. We serve food, we serve beer. We have something like 150 seats now. It's kind of crazy. It's a huge shop for a town my size, but that's going great. You can follow along with my Old Kentucky Throwdown on Instagram. The handle is KYTNT. Most of the information that we put out there about that is there. And if anybody is listening and the event hasn't happened yet and you really want to go, you can go to spencerscoffee.com/KYTNT, and there's full information about our event, talks about, what it supports, why we do it, what the prizes are, shouts out all our sponsors, and it has forms to register if you want to make the trek to Bowling Green, Kentucky and compete. We've had lots of Coffee Fest latte art champs come here specifically for the throwdown. We've had people from literally all over the country, and that's super exciting because, again, initially it was just sort of let's try to get some people together and have some fun, and it's grown into something crazy.
So awesome. Congrats. Thanks for all that information. And again, thank you for being a guest on the show. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Well, of the many things that we can take away from this conversation with Justin, I think one of the main overarching principles here is planning in details and having a sense for creating a great experience for the people attending the event. If that's your obsession, then all these practical tips that Justin has given us will naturally flow from that point. Just the way that a coffee shop creates a great experience and obsesses, a great coffee shop will obsess about the great experience a customer is going to have in that shop. The details matter, and the same thing goes for the throwdowns. Think of the people attending like guests. If you want your business to thrive, you're going to think about the customer experience. And if you want your throwdown to go well, you're going to think about the participant experience. And these tips that Justin has shared with us today, they are really great tools to help us craft that experience. So thank you, Justin, for joining us on the show and sharing all that you've learned about throwdowns. And it's just been hugely instructive. We really appreciate you and what you do for the coffee community, Justin. So thank you again. Now, if you want to attend my Old Kentucky Throwdown, you can find more information again at spencerscoffee.com/KYTNT. And there's still time to sign up and be a part of it. We encourage you to hop on down. I will definitely be there and hope to see you. If you want to reach out to me with questions, comments, feedback, or if you want to set up a call and talk about working with Keys to the Shop consulting and training, then you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS@keystotheshop.com. Look forward to hearing from you. And that's today's episode. So thank you for joining me again. Thank you, Justin, for your expertise. Let's make sure that the next throwdown that we host is the best throwdown. And I hope you have an amazing week. And of course, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.